For those renters who might be sweltering through heat waves over the summer, there's an idea being put forward in Queensland and Victoria that could see more regulation around cooling systems during excessive heat, I should say. It's being put forward by the Greens in various forms. One proposal: if a house or unit, whatever it might be, becomes so hot it's no longer comfortable to live in, landlords should be made to waive a tenant's rent for that week. For more on this, I'm joined by Brisbane City Greens Councillor Jonathan Sri. Thanks very much for your time today. So just starting off with your idea then. So you're concerned about residents in very hot Queensland properties during heat waves. What's your actual plan here? So if it gets too hot, there's a certain level, they don't pay rent for that week. How would the idea actually work?
Yeah, well, so the world's getting hotter. More and more people living in poorly ventilated rental accommodation where temperatures can get way too high for people to safely use homes during the day or get a proper night's sleep. So, I don't stay in hotels very often. I prefer to couch surf. But if I rented a hotel room that's too hot to stay in, I expect the hotel operator to provide a refund or a discount. And I'm saying the same should apply to long-term residential rentals. So that would mean landlords would have an obligation to ensure that the properties they're renting out are safe to live in. Now, landlords don't allow tenants to install roof insulation or ceiling fans or aircon themselves. So I think they have that obligation to provide that for tenants and ensure the property is up to scratch.
Policing it seems tricky. Would a tenant just send a picture of a thermometer? How do you sort of verify that? Because people would want free rent. You know, you start anything up, people will try to find the sort of leeway in the idea. How on earth are you going to police the idea?
Yeah, there's any number of existing regulations around how properties are managed and maintained. I don't think we need to get caught up in, this will be too hard to enforce in practice. You said it yourself, there are thermometers. We can have processes where properties are audited, etc. It doesn't have to be every other week the tenant's calling up the landlord saying, here's a photo of my thermometer. But it's pretty obvious right now that lots of properties are being designed in ways that they're simply not cool enough to live in during really hot days. And so at a bare minimum, we should be saying to landlords, look, you've got to take some responsibility here. I'm not articulating a fully detailed proposal for here's how it works. I'm simply saying there's a problem and government needs to address it.
All right, so I guess you're conceding it could be tricky to implement, but you're saying let's start with the idea. Many places in Queensland in particular, and when you're talking units, the only real solution could be air conditioners. We know they're expensive and also they do require a lot of energy as well. So are you prepared to have many, many thousands of air conditioners installed as a result of your idea and the emissions that would create as well?
Yeah, I think this is one of those questions that the coal lobby and the fossil fuel lobby love to throw up. It's oh no, how are we going to find the power for all these extra air conditioners? Luckily, we have this amazing technology called solar power. So we don't actually need to be burning more fossil fuels to do something as simple as keep rental homes cool. I think this idea that, we would have to increase fossil fuel consumption in order to meet energy demands is just ridiculously outdated. I think only a clown would seriously suggest that.
But what you'll do in the short term is, first of all, massively drive up the need for baseload power. So sure, maybe in 15 years or so, this could be an idea that renewables take up the slack of. But if you install thousands and thousands of air conditioners, I don't know, in the next couple of years in Queensland, you might at the very least keep coal-fired power stations in the grid that are already there that might have otherwise exited. Surely that's...
This is classic fossil fuel industry spin, but that's not how the energy grid works, right? We can meet the needs of the energy needs of a growing population through renewable energy. It's not like magic or out there science fiction. We already have the technology to do this. And so, yeah, there's all sorts of industries at the moment that are using more power than they need and that are using power at the wrong times of the day. So we can simply rejig where and when energy consumption is occurring and meet those power needs as it is without having to start up new fossil fuel power plants and all that sort of stuff. I think this is just...
Okay, but what are you saying? So are you saying that however this idea would work, because you'd need to know, we'd get in the figures. Okay, how many people need air conditioners? Presumably you want it done pretty quickly. You can't wait 10 years. At that point, would you propose that however it works, you're not going to increase emissions? So however the grid needs to be structured or whatever happens, you don't want your idea to mean more emissions. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Just say to landlords, look, rent out properties that are cool enough to live in. Landlords will find different solutions for different contexts. Some properties will need air conditioning. Some will just need to be redesigned so that they can be passively cooled. Some just need insulation in the roof. Like, it's not complex stuff. And if you provide that, put that pressure on landlords and property investors, they'll find different solutions to meet the problem. No one's saying that every single house in the entire state of Queensland has to have air conditioning 24/7. I think you're constructing a straw man argument that's trying to make this policy sound ridiculous or extreme, when actually this is similar to what a lot of other countries already do. We can meet these energy needs through renewable energy.
Right, it's all about short term though, right? I'm not saying renewable energy doesn't have a huge part to play in Australia. It's going to be a growing part of it. But right now, what is happening is renewables are increasing in the grid overall, and we're seeing coal stations increasingly at times of the day be idle. What's going to happen if you create more demand for energy? Some of those coal stations that were idle at periods of the day won't be. That's not a drastic argument to make if you're doing this in the short term.
Just get the landlords to put solar panels on the roof. This is not complex stuff. Like, it's not a big deal.
Well, it's not easy to do that on a 20-level apartment, though. You can't just whack up a few panels on that and power a whole apartment level.
I mean, I think like the piece of the problem that we're circling around here is landlords themselves, right? Like, landlords are bludgers who hoard properties. They already have enough homes. They just rip people off. Like, that's a scam in and of itself. So it almost seems like we're trying to work out how this is going to be profitable or convenient for landlords. When the simple fact
there are plenty of landlords these days. I'm just going to jump in because we're not out of time. It's a pretty broad statement. There are plenty of landlords these days that their first property is an investment property. They can't afford to buy where they live. They get a small apartment somewhere and they're in the market and they feel like they've got something and they're not exactly particularly wealthy. Is it a bit dangerous to say all landlords are bludgers and it's a scam?
I mean, I think the word dangerous is a bit funny. What we're talking about is safe housing. And all I'm saying is that if a landlord is going to rent out a property, it needs to be safe to live in. We're seeing more people dying from heat waves. We're seeing more people suffering health impacts from severe heat stress, moldy houses, stuff that a lot of people would say this is not livable. And we're simply saying that if you're going to be a landlord and if you're going to charge tenants rent to live in your property, make it safe enough to live in, put in some insulation, put in some blinds, maybe install a ceiling fan. That's not such a big thing to ask.
Okay. Jonathan Sri, I thank you for your time. I know you had some trepidation about coming on Sky News today. I hope the experience was okay.
Good on you, Tom. Catch up.